Thank you. Good evening. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda for this evening? Megan, second Tom. Any questions? All in favor? 7-0. Hey, Mr. Poole. Before the superintendent's report, I just wanted to mention that the Board of Education prides itself in conducting civil meetings which foster respect for all that are present. Public comment represents the voice and opinion of the speaker, and we ask that those addressing the board be cognizant that this is an open meeting and is available to all age groups. As such, we ask that you consider who the audience members are at the meeting, and please keep comments appropriate and respectful to all. Whether you agree or disagree with the speaker, please listen politely and respectfully. And as a reminder, there is still a mask mandate in effect for all public schools, and you're required to wear a mask indoors in all school settings. Thank you. And Mr. Poole, Superintendent's report.
Thank you, President Anderson. Welcome. Good evening, everybody. We start off with congratulations to our SAD club at the high school. You may have noticed the video that they put up on Facebook on Friday. Really well done, with a great message advocating for safe driving during the Super Bowl. I want to thank, while I'm at the high school, I want to thank the high school PTA for sponsoring a dance for seniors, Winter Wonderland, last Friday. Thank you for them. It's good to get those activities going, in our schools. Over at the middle school, this past Thursday, our program of engineers teaching algebra, Dr. Mark Love visited all of our 8th grade classes to engage students in real-world algebra applications. Students were charged with designing an intersection traffic signal system that allowed for the safest and most efficient flow of traffic. Students are really engaged and have really brought algebra into the real world for them as well. As you can see on the stage here, the student production at Wading River for Beauty and the Beast practices are well underway, rehearsals, and the performances are next week on Wednesday and Thursday. Over at Miller Avenue, the Miller Avenue's annual Super SOUP Bowl collected 1,190 items of food. Thank you to our phys ed teachers who usually set that up every year, and to the community who time and time again are very generous with their donation. If you've ever taught elementary school, which I have, you will know that the 100th day of school is a major event. So students at Miller Avenue today celebrated the 100th day with a special parade and creations, and all the students participated in that event. And in Miller Avenue and PE, I know last week I mentioned Whittle Gym was over at Wading River. I had a chance to go look at that, a lot of fun. Miller Avenue students are now enjoying Scooter Town, a time-honored favorite at the Miller Avenue phys ed program, and the students are enjoying riding their scooters around a gymnasium, which is set up to resemble our community. Includes a car wash, fire station, post office, and more. Some congratulations to our sports team. Congratulations to the girls basketball team, who just now finished their first playoff game and have won, and they are advancing to the next round of playoffs. Congratulations to them. Last Friday, congratulations to wrestler Joe Steimel for winning a county championship at his weight class. Congratulations as well to a few other wrestlers, Anthony Giordano, who finished 3rd place, Zach Wilson, who finished 3rd place, and Tyler Paris and Will Miller, who finished 4th. You may not know that the district does join a few other athletic teams that we don't hold here in Shoreham-Wading River. One of them is gymnastics. Another one is fencing. So congratulations to Abby Hunt, who's in a inter-school fencing team that we are a part of locally. And Abby won the all-league, all-county, and all Long Island for women's foil over the weekend. So congratulations to those students. I know we'll have our music students attend an upcoming board meeting for recognition, but I did want to note that this year we had 64 students which, across our schools earn All County Suffolk County Music Education Association awards and participation, and 30 students between the middle school and high school were accepted into the Long Island Festival of Strings Association. They was accepted into that program. So almost 100 students recognized for their amazing accomplishments in music. We'll certainly have them shortly to a board meeting. Tonight we have an important update really on students in academic intervention services. How are they faring? What are our numbers in the school district? It's important that we focus on those students. And our next board meeting, I believe, is March 8th, and we will start the budget process and budget presentations at that meeting. Thank you, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Poole. Any opportunity for board members? Okay. Statements from residents regarding agenda items. I don't believe we have. Nope. Okay. So can we please have Mrs. Smith come up to recognize one of our staff members.
Good evening to the Board of Education, Mr. Poole, and district office members. Dan Burkett has worked as a security guard in the Shoreham-Wading River School District for the past 3 years. Prior to Shoreham-Wading River, Dan had a very successful 28-year career in law enforcement. Dan is conscientious, hardworking, and it is evident on a daily basis that he genuinely cares about the staff and students at Miller Avenue School. Although Dan's actions are extraordinary on a daily basis, tonight I am here to recognize him for being a hero. A hero is a person who is admired for their bravery or fine qualities. Last week, a staff member at Miller Avenue School began choking. As other members of the staff started to yell, not really knowing what to do, Dan rushed down the hall and performed the Heimlich maneuver, dislodging the food from her throat. Dan's quick reflexes and knowledge of this procedure saved the life of a member of the Miller Avenue team. Dan is humble, and I know that being recognized this evening was not something that he felt necessary. When I asked Dan if he had anything to say, he told me, I was just in the right place at the right time. Dan, on behalf of the staff member, her family, the Miller Avenue family, and the Shoreham-Wading River community, thank you for being in the right place at the right time. Thank you.
Kidding. Lucky you.
Next up, we have reports and reviews by Mr. Meinster.
Good evening, members of the board, district administration, and the community members, both here and viewing at home. Tonight, we have the opportunity to share with you all an update on our elementary response intervention program and the rollout and implementation of the first year of our secondary academic intervention services plan. our administrative team and the teacher volunteers in each of the buildings, especially at the secondary level with the Secondary Academic Intervention Services Plan, worked very diligently last year to develop this plan that was approved by the board at the end of last school year, to be able to create a structure that will allow us to best meet the needs of identifying individual students at the secondary grades whose performance places them at risk of academic difficulties. And the plan allows us to both identify the data to use to help support that, which I'll be sharing, well, actually the building principals and our directors will be sharing tonight, and a little bit of discussion about how we're using that data to then inform support for our students. So before moving into the secondary AIS plan, I'm going to give a quick update. Actually, the building principals will give a quick update. This is information that was shared with our Curriculum Development Committee last week, related to how we are using that data and what that data is converting into in terms of support for our students. So in terms of the Elementary Response to Intervention Plan, that is conducted at the start of each year. A committee meets, consisting of the building principal, our psychologist, the AIS service providers, directors, all come together at the beginning of the year and at each trimester to review each and every single student's academic progress in the building in reading and math. Periodic reviews of that data does take place in between those trimester meetings to address possible changes to services in the interim period between benchmarking periods. And we do communicate with all of the parents anytime a change in service is recommended. And parents get that letter in advance of those changes. And again, those decisions are recommended by the committee. They're supported by the classroom teacher and finalized by the building principal. And again, we have changes in student services that were based on the first trimester data that was conducted at the end of the first trimester in November. We start those services as soon as is feasible, and all of those services were in place before the start of January at the elementary level. I'm going to invite both Ms. Smith and Mr. Parinello to come up to just share a little bit of the data related to the numbers on our students that are receiving supports and how those numbers have been changing in response to the data that we've been receiving. So we'll start with Miller Avenue. And Ms. Smith.
Good evening again. So the chart that I put together is a combination of data specifically from our fall meeting. So just to give a little bit more of an explanation, we meet as a team in regards to data 3 times each year, each school year. And our team consists of our support staff, our psychologists, myself, and we review every student in the building. We go through each student, we go through all of their benchmark scores. We have scores that are cumulative from kindergarten through 2nd grade in our building, depending on the age of the student. So that's what is represented in our fall meeting. Additionally, in our fall meeting is teacher input is given. So teachers are given a spreadsheet where they go through lists of students and they provide me with names, students that they believe should continue support with their reasonings, and also students that they have concerns about. So those voices are heard at that meeting also. In addition to those meetings, we have monthly meetings at Miller Avenue. So by the time we get to November, we've already met on a number of these students, and the students are in AIS, many of them already. AIS at Miller Avenue and on the elementary is a fluid class, so that's important to remember. Just because we're meeting in November doesn't mean a student hasn't entered or exited before that November meeting. So we'll be meeting again around the next progress report and towards the end of the year. So the data here represents Miller Avenue reading data, and reading data is mostly based on running record levels, but it's also used iReady data. Additionally, input from classroom teachers and reading teachers. So the service in the fall, 1st grade and 2nd grade received regular pull-out services for reading AIS, where kindergarten is a push-in service to every classroom daily from September through December. You can see that the numbers in the first column, and then after the meeting, you can see the exiting students. Students exit based on their running record level in a combination with iReady and teacher input. So although a student might fall 2 levels below, which would represent an exit from reading, we take everything in combination. It's not only based on one measure, it's based on multiple measures. So at the next one, students who remain in the service, and then you will see an additional add to who is receiving the service. At this point in November, we now have a pull-out service that starts in January for our kindergarten students. So rather than the push-in, reading teachers that have been working with our kindergarten classes now pull the children out. That's based on sight word recognition, letter recognition, and overall reading readiness in the classroom. In the final column, you can see the percent, which is based on our regular education students. Typically, we would say a number is 15, 16, 17% at an elementary level. At a K-2 level. So you can see that the second grade is aligned with what we're typically seeing. Our first grade cohort was the cohort that was at Briarcliff last year, and this is a cohort that we've been watching very carefully. We noticed that students coming into Briarcliff last year who did not have that preschool experience due to COVID and also came into Briarcliff were falling a little bit low on some of their reading skills. So what we did last year is we ended up putting a push-in service over at Briarcliff. Last spring, when we started to notice that the cohort was a little bit lower than we wanted. And we also added a 0.5 reading teacher this year, starting in January. And that teacher is either helping with reading groups for our regular reading teachers or pushing into classes for our highest needs students. Kindergarten is typically at the 20-ish number, so they're right aligned with what we would typically see for kindergarten. Remember, our kindergarten students, their skills are based on their age, also the age appropriateness of acquiring reading skills. So we typically see that a little higher than we would in second grade, and then that number drops down as we get into Mr. Parinel's building. Any question on reading data?
Thank
Okay.
you, Mrs.
I'm sorry.
Smith. No, I just wanted to say thank you. Appreciate it.
Oh, of course. So math data, I set up the chart exactly the same way. I'll tell you a little bit about the service at math. This year, we added the addition of a math AIS teacher full-time at Miller Avenue. And I know that we added that, looking at the needs of our elementary students, giving them some more AIS support due to the COVID pandemic and seeing some of the areas where we thought maybe they were struggling a bit. So we have the addition of a full-time math person at Miller Avenue. She started the year by pushing into all kindergarten classes daily. So she was working with all students. All students in kindergarten were benchmarked for math readiness skills this year, which we have not done in the past. So that's just how familiar they were with numbers, number sense, shape. So that's something brand new that we've started to try to get them a little bit more intervention right away based on their needs. Once again, you can see that the service started in the fall. When we meet in November, when we look at math, we look at a combination of module scores, math module scores, iReady data, and once again, teacher input is there. I didn't mention this before, and this is important. Students that are entering in September, first grade or second grade, if they were, specifically second grade, if they were slotted in an AIS class in the spring, we continue that in the fall. Every math student is benchmarked and given an assessment to see where their readiness is in the fall. So every student at Miller Avenue. So we review the data, and you can see that our numbers there are falling right aligned with what we have experienced in the past. So, right in that teen number. Something that we've continued is a push-in service for kindergarten. Since first and second grade, we have our grouping set up. We still have our math AIS teacher is pushing into all kindergarten classrooms. So I really hope this will help us in the future, for the summer AIS program and for next year, her being familiar with their needs, and we're really hoping to see a decline in that math number. Any questions?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
You mentioned that there's a continuation of services into the spring. Does that happen from your building to Mr. P's building?
So you mean the transition?
Yeah, do you typically, when you exit a student, wait until the first trimester's over and they get to third grade?
So what we would do for reading and math is we send the information over to Wading River School. So our data sheets, which are really fantastic to look at, it shows the students' growth across. And we would make recommendations
Okay.
based on what we see. Now, I have a feeling that Mr. Parinello and the team do the same thing. You know, they're reassessed in the fall because we might have some of that fallback from summer, looking at their needs. So the students, as they come in the fall, you know, I will let him speak to that, but everything transitions over. In June, we actually give a list of all students that we recommend for AIS and where they are with their data.
Thank you. I love the concept of the data meetings. I heard a little bit more
Yeah.
about them at CDC. I just think it's brilliant. Thank you.
It's really telling. I'd love to share some of the sheets that we use with the board if you'd like to say. I think you'd be really interested. Any other questions?
Yes.
Sure.
With the advent of pre-K, how do you, I guess, anticipate capturing any information regarding how this fits into the variables here? So you're going to have a new a data set, I assume, right, within a much smaller cohort, because obviously it's not the full cohort, but is there a way to capture that and just?
Are you
see-
talking about the math students?
No,
I'm not sure
talking
if I
about-
understand your question.
I'm talking about the institution of pre-K, pre-kindergarten.
Oh, yes, yes. I
Right.
apologize. I didn't catch the pre-K part. So, you know, the good part about our collaboration with the pre-K program is we've already got received benchmarking information from pre-K, and I know that Ms. Benz is in contact, Ms. Von Eschen, and Mr. Meister is in contact with the pre-K. We will be able to get feedback from them at the end of the year also. We will still have them come in for their screening. So just because they attended a preschool that was associated with the district doesn't mean that we won't do our full screening. So it'll be very interesting to see that transfer of information and how, you know, what type of skills that they're coming in as a cohort, something that we'll have to keep a watch on. I'm very curious about that.
Yeah, I wonder if that helps to better define what the program should be for pre-K. right?
Absolutely, yeah, I agree. It's something that we'll have to keep an eye on, but we'll be watching the cohort for sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so the handoff is very smooth. We do get that list right from Miller Avenue. It's wonderful. We see their progress from kindergarten. And if they do need services, those, just to answer your question, Ms. Tepnart, is that if they receive services at the end of second grade, we really look to continue those at the beginning of third grade because we'd rather have them in the service and feeling that extra support so they feel that success when they first come to us, and then kind of ease off on that, you know, that fall trimester, you know, that second trimester, just to take a look. If they're super strong, we might call over to the reading teacher and say, what do you think, you know, and maybe just ease them off to progress monitoring, but more often than not, we try to keep them on to give them that extra push. It's a new school, it's a new transition. Success breeds success, if that makes sense. And you could see that from our AIS data. If you look, right now this is our reading data. So let's say grade 3, 10% it might be in grade 3, and you could see it's reduced to, you know, 9%, and then like 6% of our students in 5th grade. So we try to give them that extra support while they're a little younger, so then when we ease off, they are doing very, very well. So we also tend to progress monitor as much as possible. So you'll see down on the bottom, those are the students who are in progress monitoring. So there is a certain percentage. Let's say if we have 10% in reading in 3rd grade, we'll have, you know, 4% that we're really watching closely every 2 weeks to see, just to make sure they're making progress. Okay, that's for reading AIS. And we provide support. We're using Sunday, we're using Wilson, we're using LLI with students in our reading program to give them that extra support. Any questions on reading?
Mr. Parinello, when I look at like grade 5 for a moment, how far behind would a student be if you're 6% under? What's the, you know, I guess it's running record that we're using, right?
Yes.
How do you determine what's considered an AIS service at that level, grade
Uh,
5?
Excellent. It's all right in the AIS plan. We have it, let's say if the student is, let's say a half a grade behind or a grade level behind in reading, they would be on our, half a grade, they would be on our watch list, right? So they would be, let's say, a student who might be progress monitored. If they fall a little bit more than that, let's say a grade level behind, they are going to be in our reading program. Or even, 3/4 of a grade behind, we might start to put them into a reading program to try to catch them up, because the gap just gets wider as they get older unless we kind of catch them and try to close that gap. So that's really important for us. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, no, it's good. And we go through every student, like Claudia had mentioned, Mrs. Smith had mentioned, every single child, we go through their scores at least 3 times a year, but if there's anyone that we're concerned about, that happens on a much more regular basis, either biweekly or monthly, depending on the child. This is math, very similar. What's interesting is math, maybe it's the complexity, and those sort of things, but we do have a lot more students who are in math progress monitoring, because if they're struggling with a concept or something, we tend to put them right into progress monitoring so we can keep a careful eye on how they're doing and do they need that extra support or not. And this just gives you a general overview for math. It's interesting too, the pull-out program for math does build on the foundational skills for math. So whereas you might have conceptual gaps and just difficulty reading the word problems, we had a meeting last week, I believe, both elementary principals and both AIS, math AIS teachers, just to discuss that and how we can help use that time in our math AIS period as strategically as possible to help students both with their foundational skills and with the struggles they're having right now in class with those complex word problems, difficult concepts that they're trying to master. So it's all a work in progress, but it's really exciting to see how that's going to evolve in the next couple of months and years ahead with Dr. Policelli as well, working on that with us.
Mr. Parnell again. Is there a lot of overlap? So if a student is falling behind in reading, are they typically the same student that's fallen behind in math, or are they typically 2 different cohorts?
Of course, there's some that have overlap. Those are the most challenging because if they're having reading one day, they're having math the next day. It's like every day they're getting pulled out for something. So we do have that core, and those students you have to watch very, very carefully because it's most challenging for them. But you do have, I would say, about 70% that are reading only or math only. But that core 30% is a concern, for all of us that we have to watch very carefully that go every day to either math or reading. I can get you those numbers if you're really interested in
No,
it.
just what I'm curious about is I know our math program has a lot of reading as part of it. So I'm wondering if the reading bleeds over into the math and the math into the reading.
Yes.
They
it
kind of,
abs-
they become one, yeah. It's a contributing, each contributes to the other.
Yeah, absolutely. They both are comorbidity. They're happening together, right? So they're having one and the other one. That will definitely be common. So.
Do we, I don't know that we've progress monitored years before, but maybe it's a question for Mr. Meinster. Do we feel it's accelerating because of the pandemic, or do we feel like it's flattened out and this is just our normal averages? It might be a Mr. Meinster question. But.
It's interesting. We do have longitudinal data, that to look, but if we go back to our reading, that's generally the pattern that we've seen through the years in reading, children moving through. And math is something that we're looking at to see, I would say, an increase in progress monitoring. I don't normally have, 14% of my 4th graders in progress monitoring. And I mentioned the 4th grade because, remember, they're the ones that went out just, a couple of years ago. And even the 3rd graders, too, I think our youngest students got hit hard by the pandemic because they had the virtual learning and everything else like that. Then they came back. We were one of the few schools that came back full-time. But we're seeing a lot of growth because of the smaller class sizes, the incredible work our teachers are doing every day, the amazing work of parents at home, and the student effort. We're really trying to close the gap here in SWR. So we're seeing some really nice things when I compare us to other districts when I reach out. So it's really nice to see. Go ahead.
And just to kind of go with that, the progress monitoring students are students that we believe have gaps, but they are gaps that relate to the content and concepts being covered in the regular classroom and in the regular curriculum. So in other words, they're not foundational gaps where they're really just, they don't even have the core building blocks of the information that's going on in the classroom. The purpose of AIS, the pullout, is to identify students that are more than 1 year behind, where the gaps that they're experiencing in math are foundational in nature, so that it's not a question of AIS math is not extra help on the math that's going on in the classroom. Instead, AIS math is they're pulled out to work on foundational math building block skills that will then help get them back up to a point where they can then use those foundational skills to apply them to the content going on in the actual classroom and their current grade levels work. So that's the difference between progress monitoring. And so yes, the increase in progress monitoring kids this year is a reflection of the fact that we see an increase in students who have smaller but noticeable gaps in their performance, but that we feel those gaps are related to something where the teacher can work with those kids in the RTI block period, but the classroom teacher can work with them because it's more about the content going on in the curriculum than it is about a foundational gap that suddenly has emerged. And so that is the difference between those two. I hope that answers kind of where you were looking.
Thank you.
Okay, and so we're going to shift gears now really quickly to a program that we brought in this year that is now supplemental and able to help our students with reading gaps in our AIS program. And for that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Von Eschen, who has piloted and been doing the lion's share of that work, much to the credit of our students.
Welcome. I'm saying welcome. You guys we've been talking. Well, good to see everybody. Thanks for having us tonight. The Sunday program has been really exciting this year. As you see here, we trained 24 special education teachers and reading teachers, combination of 24 grades K through 8. And this program is really based on an Orton-Gillingham approach, which, if the research shows, is the best approach for students with dyslexia or really significant reading deficits. We continue to have Wilson as a multisensory program, and Sunday is in addition to that, and we also still have LLI. So this is another option for our students. The program has 3 different levels, and we'll go through how many students are learning on each level in just a second. But Let's Play Learn is the primary version, then there's Sunday 1 and Sunday 2. So you see there sort of how a program runs. You can do it in small group. Our kids are, mostly receiving the instruction in small group. It's a 35-minute lesson, and it runs pretty quickly. So it holds the interest of our students either with disabilities or that just have, like I said, deficits. The focus of it is our students with deficits in decoding, phonics, and phonemic awareness. Although at the same time, it does have a pretty strong fluency and comprehension piece. So the feedback's been pretty good, I think, from the parents as well as the teachers, and the students we're starting to see the progress. So if I just flip one more, oh, did I go back? I'm sorry. Oh, what's going on? One more, okay. Sorry.
I just had a quick question, if you don't
Sure.
mind. So under the content level, it says beginning reading through 2nd grade reading level, right?
Yes.
But then up above, it talks about 24 special education and reading teachers K through 8.
So the content level is speaking of Sunday 1, actually. I should have specified
Oh,
that
okay.
there, so I'm glad you asked
Okay,
that. So
thank you.
Sunday 1 would be reading levels through 2nd grade. So if you had a 6th grader that's reading on a 3rd grade level, they would be using Sunday 2. Because they would, and that's a pretty extreme example I gave. If you have a 1st grader that's behind, they're going to be using Let's Play Learn. So yeah, so that's where the 3 levels come in. Yeah, sorry about that. The content level's really talking about Sunday 1, which is like their core program. Let me flip to that. So this gives you a little bit of an idea, and this will kind of show you that, because you'll see like at Prodell, there's a couple of kids on Sunday 1, and they'll probably quickly move on to Sunday 2. So it's like Alan was explaining with, really those core gaps in education, those foundational skills, that's what this is filling, so that eventually they can generalize those skills and be strong readers. So you see at Miller Ave, that's where you're going to see all the Let's Play Learn students, because of those, kids in probably like 1st grade, 2nd grade, you're seeing those kids. And none of those students would be ready for Sunday 2. So some of our students, like I said, are ready to move on to the next program already. They just needed to kind of catch up at the end. And many of our teachers were trained or certified on 2 different levels. So it's going pretty well, and we're looking at really, looking at the supplemental materials. Now that we're kind of rolling with it, we are getting a better feel for where this, who our students are that are going to benefit from this program, what programs within our schools we're going to be using this. So it's been exciting. Any other questions?
I just had one question.
Sure.
This is really exciting to have as part of our arsenal. I was curious about the criteria for a student to whether or not they are going from, no services to Sunday or Wilson to Sunday, and what kind of what would we be looking for in this program in order to specifically target?
That's a great question. So we're working on putting together something that's a little more diagnostic and specific to that. Both elementary principals and Nicole and I have been talking about that as this has been rolling. But right now what we're doing is if a student is on, an LLI program and they're just not making the progress that we would think that they should, then we're looking at doing the screener that comes with Sunday, and it would tell you if they're a good fit. And it would also tell you, yes, they're a good fit, but go with Let's Play Learn, or they're a good fit, start on this lesson of Sunday 1. So not everybody starts at the first page. And in the special education program, we're looking at kids whose primary reading delays are in decoding. So we know that from all the standardized testing that we do. So they might still have like a comprehension goal, but we realize that we can't get them to the level they need to be in comprehension until we really close that gap in those, foundational reading skills. So right now there's definitely, once we think it's an option, we go into their assessment, and that helps us determine.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else? Thank you. You're welcome.
Okay. So moving on to our secondary AIS plan. This is a overview of the work that's gone on so far at the secondary level this year. We're just rolling this out. I am going to invite Mr. Pugliese to come up and just kind of talk us through the process that's been going on at both the middle school and the high school with regard to our secondary AIS plan and its implementation. And then we're going to share some data. The directors are here as well, so that if there are any questions related to the reading and the math data that we're going to be sharing, they would be able to jump in and also provide some insight into that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Yes, the AIS groups that we've been working with as of late is just one additional layer to what we're already doing both at the middle school and the high school to ensure that every student is as successful as possible. So the data that we looked at the start of this year included the first marking period, the benchmark exams at the high school, and then comparing that data longitudinally with what we have from ALEX, what we have from iReady, to make sure that students are performing to their appropriate levels given that data that we were able to collect. Like I said, this is in addition to regular guidance meetings that we have each quarter to review grades, to look at individual students, to identify whether or not these are truly academic gaps or gaps either in motivation or if there is something else that's potentially going on to make sure that all students are achieving to the best of their abilities. We loop in the teachers as well. We bring in every additional piece of evidence that we can, again, as we look at each individual student. 70 at marking period grades is generally what we use as our break point. So students that score either a 70 or below are the students that we begin to look at and we begin to target in terms of whether or not they do need additional services. When we look, if we go ahead, this is one example. You can look here. This is of secondary AIS data for grade 7 math. You can see across, again, any student that is flagged. We look to see, again, are there additional markers in addition to just, I apologize, that's a little small and probably a little difficult to read. I certainly can't see it from here. But anything that's in yellow are indicators and then gets coded from there in terms of where are they right now, where were they in comparison to a previous marking period, Again, is there additional data that we can look at, either from Alex, in this case here, for AIS, for math? Again, to see, are they performing where they should be performing, or are they below? Once students are identified as potentially being behind what they are capable of doing, that's when our different levels of intervention come in. At a very base level, both at the high school and at the middle school, we have, during the school day, either extra help at the middle school, extra help in our Academic Success Center at the high school. We also have peer tutoring through our NHS students to begin that initial kind of support for students that are struggling, maybe just a couple points behind where they should be if there's a slight downward trend. When we do have a change in semester, like we just had, a couple weeks ago here at the high school and at the middle school, that's when we have an opportunity to change schedules and insert a class. Unlike at the elementary schools, where there is that period built in, that time frame built into the day, where students can be pulled out for these services, that's not something that's present, in that kind of package at the high school and at the middle school. So, just recently at the high school, when we had our meetings, we did notice a couple of kids who we did identify as certainly in need of additional support in terms of an AIS class. This happened to be, students who we felt could benefit from being added to our Read-Write, our AIS reading program. And those students, we reached out, we did a little bit more background work on, and it was determined that a couple of them certainly were good candidates for that course. The parents were contacted, and the change was made to their schedule where now they were added into it. So again, we operate differently, both at the middle school and the high school, because of our schedules. We have our initial levels of intervention that we can bring in, that we can recommend. And then when we do see those larger gaps, those more consistent gaps, when we do have that opportunity, we are able to make those adjustments to schedules. We obviously look at this when we're now preparing for the 22-23 school year and looking at grade or looking at current levels of achievement, if we should recommend a student into a program for the start of next year. So not only is it, what we can do midstream, but what can we do moving forward into the coming years to make sure that students are successful.
I just had a question on
Sure.
how Alex plays into this. So
Sure.
on the math section there,
Yep.
this is probably more of a question for Alan, because I'm kind of going between middle school and high school. But I know typically we're using, running records in the elementary grades. Alex, right? It's a combination of things. But since we've instituted it, how close is that coming to where we expect it to provide good data for us?
So it's already providing good data in terms of being able to identify students that are lagging their peers.
Okay.
And so as a comparative measure, it actually already is working very well. What we do is exactly that. So for example, in the chart that you see up there,
Yeah, I was
the
trying to
right-hand
zoom
column
in
is
to
all of
see
the
the
ALEX data,
commonality.
and it's the
Okay.
percentage of standards mastered. So what we do, and it's part of this process, is prior to the meeting, we will actually go through an entire grade level, and we level the ALEX performance across the entire grade level. What is the average number of standards mastered for students in 7th grade at the end of that benchmarking period? And so we know what the average student is, and then we also look to see where is the cut point for the bottom 20th percentile. Because it's that bottom 20th percentile, those are our at-risk students, typically. From our own historical of knowing the knowledge of past years, that's where the cut tends to be, where students that are more than a year behind, they fall into the bottom 20th percentile generally of a class. So that data is exactly how that is used in that chart. If a student falls below that 20th percentile point, they're flagged automatically as an AIS candidate. And then the committee meets and will look at those students very closely to see, okay, how are they performing in other measures? That usually involves reaching out to the classroom teacher to see how are they doing on class tests, on quizzes, participation, how, the classroom teacher's take on, are they getting it, or do they need, potentially, that supplemental support? So
And
that's how ALEX is being used.
And in this case, it's full, so, I forgot what the schedule is, but throughout the year? We're doing it how many times?
The Alex benchmark is, well, Alex actually is based on how often the students use it.
No, I'm talking
but
about
we are
your
able to
review.
do knowledge checks, so there is an
Yeah.
initial knowledge check that is completed in September.
Okay.
That's the
That's your
benchmark and the baseline for the year. We force a second knowledge check in January so that if a student hasn't been in the system enough to get a knowledge check on their own, because it will periodically send knowledge checks based on frequency of use of the product.
Okay.
But we force one for everybody in January. That is the second benchmark. And then in May or early June. And again, those are set in the building by the principal working with the staff to say when is the most appropriate time to set up that benchmark. With Alex, it's simply done during a math class. So it doesn't really interrupt the flow of the instructional program, and it's at a time that's identified.
And for a cohort, what's the typical window that it takes to go through for Alex?
It's a period.
How long?
A period.
No, I
Ro-
meant to
oh.
get through the entire cohort and establish what that baseline is. Are we talking about a matter of weeks?
Oh, no. Once the data is actually, because there's a window in which it's administered,
Right.
which is probably about a week or two.
Okay, that's what I
As
meant.
soon as that window closes, we have the data within an hour.
Okay.
And then we're able to use that, and again, it's brought right into that very next AIS committee meeting, and it's used to identify, we turn it around very quickly. The same thing is done at the elementary level. We want to, as soon as the trimester ends, that data is collected, it's analyzed, it's coded, and it's used at the next meeting, which is usually within a week at most, or 2 weeks after the end of that benchmarking period.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so this is just, again, this is the high school data, so this is just an example of what the high school geometry breakdown looks like, and again, it includes the quarter grades from the students. We flag kids, again, it's students below a 75 are the students that we typically will take a look at. That's what the color coding there is on the left. The service that is recommended is also on this chart. How they did on their Regents benchmark, because any one of the courses like high school geometry that ends in a Regents exam, we give a Regents benchmark. That's given in December. And then there's a second benchmark given in March or April. And then we have Alex, and so that's the data that's used, and you can see the color coding on here reflects that. This is the same chart, but for reading. And this very quickly is a summary for grades 6 through 12 in both reading and in math, just like what we shared earlier with the elementary levels. Shows the number of students that are currently in reading AIS, that's the pullout by grade level, and the number of students that we currently have tagged for progress monitoring in both reading and in math.
At the high school, can you exit the AIS system mid-year?
Mid-year, typically not.
We certainly don't encourage that, but as it is a voluntary program, it's not mandated. If a parent requests it, we certainly can. We try to talk them out of it, but yes, if they ask for it, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I just ask you to touch on the National Honor Society peer tutoring? I know very little about it.
Sure, no problem at all. That is one more layer that we have within our continuum of services. Obviously a big part of NHS is community service, and one of those opportunities is through peer tutoring. So it usually starts to crank up around this time of the year as students are getting closer to their end of year exams. What we will do is we will create those pairings wherever possible. When a student or a parent reaches out either to an individual teacher or through a guidance counselor, that their student they feel needs a little bit more support. Teachers can initiate that conversation as well. If they feel like a student could use just that a little bit additional push, could certainly recommend to a guidance counselor, hey, can you see if someone's available in geometry, in algebra 2, whatever it might be. We then look to see where we can arrange for one of our NHS students who has an overlapping period within their schedule, either a study hall, a lunch period, something along those lines that corresponds with the student in need of additional support. We make sure that's done during the school day in the building, in the library. We're not setting this stuff up either outside of school or anywhere else. So that's really how it works. Again, it's initiated by any number of means. It's one of those things that we mention at our grade level meetings to the students at the start of the year and then reinforce periodically, that is one additional layer of help that they can receive. It's one that often students are the most likely to want to get involved with because it's kind of the least intrusive. It's a natural pairing quite often, and oftentimes it's someone that they already know, that they're comfortable with. So it really generally works very well for the student who needs the support, and then obviously all of us that are in education know how much that benefits the student who is providing the additional support as well.
Out of curiosity, would you be able to estimate how many pairings you have in a given year, or?
Not off the top
Okay.
of my head.
All right.
If I did, I would just kind of be creating a number out
Okay.
of midair.
Just curious
But
as to how much.
it is a decent number. I think the only way I could really probably quantify that is to go back into NHS hours and see
Don't do that.
exactly how many that is. But it is a fair number that's utilized, not as frequently as I would like it to. But again, most of our support services are not utilized as frequently as I would like them to.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea.
Sure.
Let me ask a question on the secondary IS. When I look at the math,
Sure.
so I think I've asked this before, but in general, is there a level in which we'd get concerned? Because when I look at between math IIS and progress monitoring between grade 8, 9, and 10, they look like high numbers, right, ultimately? So is there something that we are learning as part of this that could be happening extra help-wise, or it looks like a third of the class of each of those classes, just about maybe 20, 25% are in need of some kind of support. Is that accurate? Am I reading that?
So the AI, those are the numbers of students, not the percentage of students. So if you're talking about, for example, in grade 8, where you have a class of about 150, 160 students, 25 is actually a little bit under 1/6. So that's about 16, 17%, which, as we talked about at the elementary level, that's actually about right for AIS. It's the bottom, as I said, even with the data that we do, you're really looking to identify who are those bottom 20th percentile of a given grade, and those are the students that you would want to be able to reach out to try to get in for support. Are these numbers a little bit higher? Well, again, you can see they vary quite a bit from grade to grade. 6th and 7th grade, you can see it's 16 and 15 kids. That would be obviously closer to the 10% mark. But it does vary, and sometimes it's also the variability of a grade level. And sometimes you have a grade level where there are more kids that struggle, and other grade levels where there are less. But no, these numbers are fairly typical of the percentages that we would expect to see in students that are, that we would want to incorporate into our supplemental support programming.
And Mr. Palese, with the Academic Success Center,
Yes.
so do we see a lot of help needed for 9 and 10? I know it's just 9 and 10 at the high school versus 8. Are you seeing kids sign up? Because it does seem like it's 50 kids. Grade 10, 25, 30, you're about 30 kids there.
Sure. Yes, we are absolutely seeing numbers up in the ASC, in addition to just availing themselves to the extra help as well, but specifically targeting teachers when they're available, when it works within their schedule. So absolutely. Have we done a correlation between those students to see if they are, in fact, our AIS students? No, not as of yet.
That's kind of where I was going. Thank you.
Sure, yeah,
right.
no,
That's what
not
I'm trying to see.
not as of yet.
Yeah, is it overlapping themes again? It goes back to reading again, the reading piece into
Sure.
the math piece, and are they,
Yeah, for those,
duopoly, or, okay.
right, for those students, I am happy to see that they are availing themselves of that service, that they're not mandated to be there. They are choosing to
to be
go
there.
up and to avail themselves of that.
Yeah, again, I'll just raise the flag. I don't know at what point we become alarmed or not, if these are high numbers or not. I know that we're saying that, Mr. Mines is saying there's a certain percentage we expect. These just look like high numbers to me.
Okay.
What everyone else feels, but look like high numbers. Not sure what we could do differently. I know that we're putting the services in place for these students, and I'm glad to see there's been significant progress since last year, even just having this.
Sure.
Seeing it. But I don't know if it's just because we're becoming more aware of the data, or it's just this is a fact of where we are.
Yeah, that is certainly my feeling. Whenever you compile that much data,
Yeah.
you're going to see.
You're going to uncover.
Exactly.
Yep, you're going to
Exactly.
uncover it. Thank you, Mr. Police.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay. That basically concludes all of the data that we had, and just an overview again of how we're implementing all of that data to help support and identify students in our programming. We will continue third quarter. We will go through that period again at the secondary. And again, as Mr. Pugliese said, both at the middle school and the high school, this is data that is being used. The counselors have access to this. They're actually at the table when we're having those data discussions, and they are using that information when they go and they work on student schedules for next year. And we'll continue to do that. We'll revisit at the end of third quarter. Counselors would then have the ability, both at the end of third quarter and at the end of the school year, to be able to use this exact same data to be able to go back and review recommendations for students and make adjustments as needed based on how the students are performing as they build next year's schedule. Any questions about the program in general? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Meinster. Next, we have votes and resolutions. Can I get a motion to approve the CPSE, CSE, and 504 meeting summary? Rob, second Tom. Any discussion or questions? All in favor? 7-0. Can I get a motion to approve December 14th public session minutes? Tom, second. Henry, any discussion or questions? All in favor? 7-0. Approval of the December 21 Treasurer's Report. Can I get a motion? Rob, second Jim. Any discussion or questions? All in favor? 7-0. And then, Mrs. Mahoney, can you please read the memo for the policies for first read?
Yes, thank you. On February 3rd, 2022, the policy committee meeting had met and reviewed the following policies for a first reading. Policy number 1800, donations, gifts, and grants to the district. This policy corresponds with district policy number 5230, acceptance of gifts, grants, and requests to the school district, and number 3274, corporate sponsorships. There was discussion that our current policy is more generalized, and it was decided that the district policy would be kept in place of the NISPA policy. However, it would be renumbered to match the NISPA's numbering system. It was also recommended that the last paragraph of the district policy be removed as it's unnecessary and outdated. Policy number 1801, corporate sponsorships. This policy would be kept from the district policy manual. However, it would be renumbered from number 3274. It was originally recommended to correspond with the NISPA policy number 1800, donations, gifts, and grants to the district. However, it was suggested to keep this policy on its own as it gives the district an opportunity to accept or refuse corporate sponsorships. Policy number 1925, interpreters for hearing impaired parents. This policy would replace district policy number 7211, provision of interpreter services to parents who are hearing impaired. It was suggested to adopt the NISPA policy as it is current. The exhibits with that policy number 1925, it's 1925E.1, the exhibit, the accommodation request form, and 1925-E.2 is the response to the request for accommodation. Both exhibits to policy number 1925 are suggested for adoption with the policy as it sets a standard for the proper handlings of the request. It also provides for proof and record that a request was made and responded to. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to accept these policies for the first read? Rob? Second Mike, any discussion or question?
I just ask going forward, maybe there's error, but can we get the policies in the packet?
Inside,
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
attach the policies into
Okay.
the board package. Sure.
Thank you.
any other discussion or questions? All in favor? 7-0. Okay, we have two Board of Education resolutions. Is it okay to take these as a block? Okay, can I get a motion to approve 2022-150, 2021-22-151? Rob, second Mike. Any discussion or questions? All in favor? 7-0. There are 4 curriculum and instruction resolutions. Is it okay to take these as a block? Okay, can I get a motion to approve 2021-22, 152 through 155? Mike, second Tom. Any discussion or questions?
I had a question on 21, 22, 152, and I just wanted a little bit more background on what the I understand the purpose of the resolution, but just wanted a little bit more background from maybe Mr. Meinster on the next generation science standards and, what's the big picture? This is obviously a first introduction, right, for the
Well,
changeover?
There's been some preliminary work where teachers have gone to workshops. I'm actually going to, if he's okay with it, ask Mr. Palicelli to come up and actually just kind of give a brief description of what this phase of that work is designed to do. That would be Emily Kang's sequence for work with the district.
Sure. So as we transition into the NGSS, because the next-gen science standards are not a shift in content necessarily, but more a shift in how the science is taught. So they start from a question, and a question leads to another question, leads to an understanding. So it is a shift from our teachers that are used to following a textbook or a scope and sequence and progress right down the topics, even though those topics may not even relate to each other. So Dr. Kang is, she's a professor, she's a dean at Adelphi University. She does this work. I actually found her through our neighboring districts that use her, to the point where I asked for some days for professional development for our teachers at the elementary school to help them understand what the shift was and to help them identify like a sequence that they would follow of questions, a sequence of questions, not necessarily a sequence by textbook. So she could help them develop that and also develop their capacity for creating their own lessons that are phenomena-based. She was only able to give me 3 days between now and June. That's how often she's being used. So she is highly regarded in this area. She is practicing in this area currently at the college level, and her background's in teaching and in science, so she's, I think we're off to a good start by using her, and then we can evaluate where we go, how we extend that to next year.
So I guess when you look at NGSS, are we looking at material sources where we're actually going? It's not just textbooks anymore, right? So where is that leading to, I guess, big picture?
Actually, you know what, Henry, when I had the conversation with her, so we currently use Mystery Science at our elementary level. She was very familiar with Mystery Science and actually felt that Mystery Science is one of the products that's more closely matched to the NGSS. So by using Mystery Science as our foundation, she felt that we were in a good place to springboard from that. So Mystery Science is actually our tool that we're using instead of a rote textbook.
So at least right now, we're not expecting a significant change in the next
Not a significant change, but we're kind of capacity building. The reality is that the current third graders this year will be the first cohort to face the new 5th grade assessment for science. So that's kind of where the state is in their timeline of mapping out for how the assessments will change.
All right, thank you. That's kind of what I was looking for, a little bit of background, not so much on the resolution, but where we were looking to go.
Very good.
Appreciate that.
And I would also like to just point out 2122-5, 5th grade Philadelphia field trip. It's nice to see that back on the agenda.
I do have to give Mr. Parinello a tremendous amount of credit for the diligence that he has pursued. Getting everything in place for that trip was no easy task, especially finding dates that would actually work for everything. So, again, a lot of credit there. So.
Yes, thank you, Mr. P. Any other discussion or questions? Okay to vote, all in favor? 7-0. We have one human resources resolution. It's the approval of the CSEA Memorandum of Agreement regarding the creation of a new position. Can I get a motion? Rob, second Mike. Any discussion or questions? All in favor? 7-0. Now, there are 2 sections of business and operations resolutions. We have 2021-157 through 2021-158. 160, general business and operations resolutions. There's 4 of those. Is it okay to take those as a block? Okay, can I get a motion for 157 through 160? Rob, second Jim. Any discussion or questions?
Curious, 2122-159, getting rid of a TV from 1993. Where was that TV? And how did it make it that long?
Going in Smithsonian.
It's funny. I guess that's going to clear up some space
No
in
one
your
answered.
building, Mrs.
No one
Smith. Can I get a vote? All in favor? 7-0. Okay. Section 2 has 29 proposed bid, proposed bid awards for the 2022-2023 school year. Is it okay to take these bid awards as a block? Okay, can I get a motion for 2021-2022, 161 through, bear with me here, hold on. 189. Rob, second Meg. Any discussion or questions?
Ms. Anderson, is it 180?
Yeah, I thought it was 188. You have
188. On 189, there's a MSRP discount bid award for technology, audio, visual, computer interactive whiteboards for the 2022-2023 school year.
I
We
apologize.
don't
that
have that in
correct?
board docs.
You don't
We
have
don't
that
have that in
one?
board docs.
188.
It's not here.
That one is 188 on ours.
Oh, okay.
Can you just
Okay.
read off? Yep.
Yes. So
Let
there's
me-
something missing.
Let me look through, see if these are numbered the same.
I
There's-
think, I'm
There's
sorry.
two 170s.
In the agenda, yeah, in the agenda, the numbers might have, there was one last-minute agenda item that was added, so those numbers, it should be continuing, actually. The last one in business should be 189.
189,
Those-
okay. Do you happen to know which one it was that was added?
Yes, actually, it was all the way up in curriculum and instruction. It was the last one, it was 155 was added. So all those numbers thereafter, I apologize, had to be renumbered to one later. So 170 would be 171, 170 would be 172, and onward.
The 155 is Philadelphia?
Yeah, 155 was the field.
So
Yeah, so 155 is the field trip to Philadelphia.
Okay.
All of the rest are correct up to 170. The second 170 in the agenda, the approval of bid award for mat supplies, should be 171. The following 171 should be 172, and ongoing.
Okay, so 170 is repeated.
They're just,
Okay.
they're not out of order. It's just that those numbers one was skipped over when I was redoing the agenda numbers.
So then 170 approval for the bid award should be 171, and then everything follows?
Yes.
Okay, thank
yes.
you. I
Is
understand now.
the second 170 time sensitive?
I'm sorry?
Well, I guess this is a question to the admin. Is
Oh.
170, I don't know, I'm picking the math supply one. Is that time sensitive? Can we just pull it and then, just so that we're consistent?
It's just a renumbering issue, though.
Yeah, I think it's a renumbering thing. Can we just, you know what we'll do? Let's take a motion to amend the agenda to reflect that the Philadelphia trip is added in here, and then the numbers changed to 161 through 188. Can I get a motion to amend the agenda? Rob, second.
Say that again, just so.
189 or 188?
Maybe Stephanie can explain it one more time, because the way I understand it is we added, you said Philadelphia was added in?
Right. So when the agenda goes out, I number all of the resolutions. This one happens to be an extensive list. When the curriculum and instruction resolution number 155 was added, the remaining resolutions underneath it or continuing on had to all be renumbered as well. So just when I got down to 170, I was renumbering, but I must have skipped over one of them. And so the numbers are not necessarily out of order, they're just one behind.
One
So,
behind, okay.
yeah,
Why don't we renumber the second 170 as
as one,
189?
yeah,
Okay,
Amend the math.
right, the math supplies to
To number
189.
189.
okay,
My apologies.
okay.
Good place to put it with the math.
This is why you're a leader, Mr. Poole.
I just
Do we,
wanted to make
do we
sure
need
weren't
to take a
missing-
motion to renumber it? Is that? Yeah, okay, all right. Can I take a motion, please, to renumber the agenda items? Tom, second Henry, all in favor? Okay, 7-0. Okay, and then we just need to vote on the bid awards. Can I get a vote? All in favor? 7-0. Okay, we have, need a motion to approve the personnel agenda. Can I get a Tom, thank you. Rob, any discussion or questions? All in favor? 7-0. Okay. I believe we have one, no discussion items or communication items, and
Yes.
one comment from a resident.
I
Yes.
just have a quick question. I'm sorry, I was asleep or something when we went through the district calendar. Approved it, but typically the day before Thanksgiving, is that just an early dismissal, or is that a superintendent's conference day? What do we have this year?
For this year, that day was the way the calendar worked out. That was the day off. But typically, that is the week where we do the early dismissal drill. Usually, it was on the Tuesday. Normally, that Wednesday is an early dismissal drill. It's about 15 minutes, I believe, earlier.
Do we have school Wednesday before Thanksgiving?
Yes.
Potentially early dismissal.
Yes.
Okay, so next on the agenda is the comments from residents. Thank you
Yes.
for your patience.
Mr. Joe?
Good luck.
Scania?
You can just state your name, you can state your name and your address.
Joe Skanga, 220 Hidden Acres Path, Wading River.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me, President Anderson, Mr. Poole. One thing you did say, Mr. Paranella is phenomenal. Out of every person that I've run into in the school, he is probably by far the best person, not knocking anybody else. I don't want to have a political discussion or anything. I thank you for having me, so I'm not going to, I really don't want to go into politics. It's more the stats. I mean, I'm sure you know why I'm here. When people like me start getting aggravated with the masks, the silent majority that kind of keep our mouth shut, I just don't understand at this point why we can't just defy the mandate. MassPeak was about to do it. We can go into all the stats. I mean, the masks, somewhere around 3 to 11% effectiveness. John Hopkins studies. That's if they're worn properly. The students here don't wear them properly. Statistically, there's a 0% chance of a student dying from COVID at this point. I mean, those are just the numbers. It's 244. Nearly everyone has had, a comorbidity issue. I don't understand the distraction. I sat back there for, the first time in my life ever listening, and you're talking about the AIS kids and everything. The distraction that goes on with these masks, and you guys are supposed to represent and protect our children, and my son's one of them. The distraction that's going on with these masks and how these kids are getting left behind compared to the danger of COVID, when they look back 20, 30, 40 years from now, they're going to question why we did what we did. We set kids back academically and what that's going to do to them later on. And the fact that, you guys don't want to stand up, so I'd like to know the reason. What's the reason you have the community behind you? I think you know that. I'm not the first person to ever say this. What's the reason we don't defy the mandate? Mr. President Anderson, anybody? Just curious.
During this portion of the meeting, we take statements from residents, and then in terms of if you have specific questions or want to reach out directly to the board via email or the administration, you're welcome to do so.
Okay. Sometimes it's difficult to get a response. I've had that issue, to be honest. That's a whole nother story.
I do know if you call Mr. Poole's office, he'll be sure to respond to you.
You guys, okay, then I'll put it like this. You guys are, let's, political, whatever. You guys are elected to do a job. You have the community by far and away that wants things done a certain way, and you're just deciding not to do them. It's not a law. It was not passed by the legislature. This is a mandate by an unelected official telling us what to do, okay? That's wrong. You should at least teach our children that you can't do that, because that goes down a really slippery slope in life, where we start allowing people to just randomly do mandates. This was not passed by the legislature. This is not a law. It's a mandate. It's not a federal law. And we're one of the, what are there, 5 states left that are doing this? Look at the numbers in the other states. The numbers haven't skyrocketed. They've gone down. Florida hasn't had a mandate forever. If you want to wear a mask, you can. Wear an N95. These do nothing. That's statistically shown. Okay? N95s, they protect you. They don't protect the person next to you, but they protect you. If people are concerned, it's not that you're not allowed to wear a mask. You have the choice. You're not giving the parents a choice to do what's right for their kids. And, I mean, there's never a wrong time to do the right thing. You know, it's time. You know, I know at some point that it's going to be lifted, and other states have already lifted it, but why not us? Why can't we be the first ones to do it? State funding, I mean, what does the state give us? 15% of our budget? I actually looked. Somewhere around there. If we're worried about losing state funding, I think that parents would, for the most part, would be okay with paying a little bit more taxes to have that freedom, because it's going to go away. It just takes one district to do it. Why not us? I have nothing else to say. I would like an answer, if you can let me know where to send the email that
Sure,
I can
yep,
get
we
an answer
can,
on it.
our district clerk can give you our Board of Ed email.
Okay.
And like I said, at any time, feel free to contact the superintendent's office. She can give you his phone number as well.
Okay.
Thank you for coming. Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting and go into executive session? Megan, second. Jim, all in favor? 7-0.